You ever stop and wonder how we make sense of it all at the very end? When we look back on everything, what is it that makes a life feel complete, feel whole? Well, today, we're going to dive right into that question, one that sits at the very heart of the final chapter of our lives. Okay, so let's think about two totally different lives. On one side, you've got Neil Armstrong. At just 39, he does something that changes history forever. First man on the moon. Then, on the other side, you have Grandma Moses, who didn't even start her celebrated painting career until she was almost 80. So, what gives? Does a meaningful life mean having this huge early success, or can you find it in a passion that blooms much, much later? And that really gets to the heart of a huge psychological question. When death stops being this abstract idea and starts feeling like a real, approaching reality, how do we grade ourselves? What's the metric we use to measure our own life? And it's not about comparing yourself to Neil Armstrong or Grandma Moses. It's about your own internal scorecard. Well, the psychologist Erik Erikson gave us this really powerful way to think about it. He called it the final stage of our development, this ultimate tension between achieving a sense of what he called integrity or falling into a state of despair. It is, for all intents and purposes, the ultimate life review. All right, so let's dig into the positive side of this first. What does it actually mean to achieve this sense of integrity? What does it feel like? Ego integrity. It's this deep, deep feeling of wholeness. It's when you can look back at your entire unique path, all the wins, all the losses, all the weird detours, and see it not as just a bunch of random stuff that happened, but as a story, a coherent story that makes sense to you. It's a fundamental acceptance of the one and only life you actually got to live. Yeah, this isn't something that just happens overnight. It usually kicks in sometime after age 60. It's about getting enough distance from the day-to-day grind to finally see the larger picture of your life. But here's the kicker. Your sense of meaning isn't measured against some universal standard. It's deeply personal, based on your values. And when you feel you've lived by them, the result is this incredible sense of peace. Think about someone like the musician and activist Pete Seeger. For him, a meaningful life wasn't about getting rich or famous. It was about his contribution, his life's work of preserving American folk music. That was his legacy. And it's a perfect example of how we define meaning from the inside out, not based on what the world tells us to value. And this is absolutely key. Integrity isn't something you can just conjure up at the finish line. It's more like a harvest. It's the cumulative result of a lifetime of choices and commitments. Every single one builds the foundation for that final feeling of peace. So now let's flip the coin. What happens when that look back doesn't bring peace, but instead it brings a lot of pain? Well, that's what Erikson called the state of despair. Despair? Man, that's that gut-wrenching feeling that your one life, your one shot was somehow wasted. It's this painful conclusion that you never quite became the person you were meant to be, or you missed the boat on what really mattered to you. It's a heavy, heavy burden of what-ifs. And it's more than just being sad, you know? It's a sharp, painful realization that certain doors are now locked forever. Suddenly, time is running out, and there's no way to go back for do-over. And that feeling makes death seem less like a natural end and more like a terrifying deadline for a life full of unfinished business. Okay, we have to be super clear about something here. Pretty much everyone has regrets. It's a normal part of living a full, complex life. Ordinary regret is kind of like a curiosity about roads not taken. But real despair, the kind Erikson's talking about, that's a whole other animal. It's when regret becomes the only lens you see your life through, and it blots out any good, any meaning, anything of value at all. So if this sense of integrity is something that's built over an entire lifetime, how does that actually work? Well, modern psychologists have this really cool metaphor for it. They call it the pruning process. Picture your identity like a bush or a tree in your garden. You can't just let every single branch grow in every direction, right? To create a strong, beautiful shape, you have to prune. You choose which branches, which values, which parts of you to nourish and reinforce, and you consciously snip away the ones that are no longer really you. This isn't about loss, it's about intentional, beautiful shaping. And you know, this whole pruning thing, it actually starts way earlier than you might think. Research shows that teenagers who really explore different values and then truly commit to their own, that's called identity achievement, they're building a super strong foundation for integrity down the road. But on the flip side, those who just sort of adopt the identities their parents or society hand them might end up feeling pretty empty when they finally do that life review. So if you map it out, it kind of goes like this. First, you explore all the things you could be.
Then you commit to who you really want to be. After that, you spend your life reinforcing that choice by living your values. And all along the way, you're pruning, letting go of the paths that aren't truly yours. It's this active, lifelong process of becoming the author of your own story.
Okay, so what's the big takeaway from all this? Where do we land? Well, the conclusion is actually pretty surprising, and it points to this beautiful idea of wisdom found in balance. So here's the twist. The central paradox of this whole stage of life: you might think the goal is to get to the end with a perfect score, zero regrets. But that's not it. That's not the goal at all. Trying to erase every single regret is actually missing the point. In fact, Erikson himself believed that genuine success isn't about destroying despair completely. It's about achieving a healthy working balance between integrity and a manageable amount of regret. It's about being able to hold both the satisfaction and the sorrow in your hands at the same time. So get this, having some regret doesn't mean you failed. Not at all. In a way, it's actually a sign that you were curious, that you were alive and sensitive to all the infinite lives you could have lived. It means your life was rich enough to have had other paths worth wondering about. So let's circle all the way back to that amazing pruning metaphor. If your life is this unique work of art that you've been shaping for decades, the goal was never to make it perfect. The cuts, the snips, the branches that are no longer there, they are all part of the sculpture's story. So the final question isn't about perfection at all. The real question is this: when you step back and look at the final shape, which branches, which commitments, which relationships, which passions are the ones that define the whole piece for you? Because those are the ones that create the silhouette of a life that, for you, held true and lasting meaning.